Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Braden with Bass Feed. So, I'm going to go over my favorite baits that I found to work this time of year. Now, I know I don't have a ton of experience, but the baits I've found are undeniably working. So, setting that aside, my February top baits next year will be much more refined and we'll include some different things, I'm sure. But for now, I said I'd spill the beans, and I don't mind. I don't have another tournament for a month or so, and I'm an open book. So let's just dive into it. So I'll try to do, without spilling everything, show you. This is my winter bait box. This box has been added to throughout the last 4 weeks, and it's still a work in progress. But this is literally everything that I throw this time of year to get bit. So I'm just going to dive right in. Actually, I'll go through a little bit of my progressions as I went through these baits and tried to figure out what's working when I first got out on the water. I want to say it was the first or second week of February. I started out doing my favorite stuff. Not my favorite, but what had been working for me. And, drop shot. I love drop shot. I have an array of drop shot baits, and I fancy myself a good drop shot fisherman. Now, no matter how good I was at adjusting as I went along, I just was not getting bites consistently. They were kind of picking at it, and I get picked up here and there, but it wasn't enough for me to go, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to use to win a tournament. At no point did I think that. So from there, I went to a net. A net still has a place in this box, but it was along the same lines. I couldn't cover enough water, and it was so getting these fish to bite. I varied in size and weights and tried to work through that to key in on these fish. That just didn't work consistent enough for me, and when it was working, I couldn't cover enough water. So it should have a place in all winter tackle boxes, I think. I then threw everyone's favorite this time of year. I mean, any good fisherman is throwing some sort of football head jig with either a craw, double tail grub, or a Kitech on the back. Now, I'm sure it wins tournaments. Actually, I'm positive it still wins tournaments. But again, for me, my style of fishing, it didn't stick. Now, I did get a couple good bites. Now, I was going to lean on this pretty hard. And I still will. I probably still will. I just bought a couple more to play around with just to see if I can generate more bites. But, for now, I moved on to baits that were working a little bit more consistently. And it wasn't, okay, and then I threw, when I was dragging through areas where I knew there was fish, I was throwing a tube, this exact tube, but it was rigged differently. It had the exposed hook. It's still tied on. That was pretty good. I actually was getting picked up on some very difficult days and where seemingly nothing worked. So it definitely has a place in my box. And I don't really see guys talking much about tube fishing around here, although I'm sure I don't follow everybody. But that should be talked about a little more. I think for those who know they're around fish and have trouble getting these fish to commit to anything, I think it's definitely at least worth a try. Same way you would use a football head, just kind of drag it, hop it, and I think that might work pretty well. I didn't commit to it. I'm sure I'd be leaning on it more if I didn't find some other techniques that were working and kept covering a little more water. And that worked with my fishing style. So then I was also playing around with this guy right here, Dark Sleeper from Mega Pass. These are pretty cool. You know, I've always had them in my box, but I never really made them work. And the fact that I started getting bit on this when, again, it was those days where it seemed like I couldn't even get any bites. These were getting picked up. I have one size bigger too. I just went with the heavier options so I could drag bottom. And I forget where I saw that. Somebody said they're good for dragging bottom, and I always am focused on something with bottom contact, and that is a great way to fish, 80% of the year. But I'll tell you, there are times of the year where I fish over the top of them, and I find that they are just a little more aggressive when something is swimming right over the top of them. And it seems like some days they're just looking up. And so I get that. And that's a part of why I'm successful, is because I could determine which way they're looking any given day, as long as I see some reactions to some fish. So bottom contact, that's a killer. Now, my first fish of the year, or maybe it was second or third, super simple setup. I just had, I think it was either a 3-3 or a 2-8 Kitech on the back of like a ball head. I was just swimming that over a stump, and kaboom. That was eye-opening. That they were willing to swim up in the column and grab a bait from, it was 40 feet of water. And I was only swimming this maybe 20, 25. And that surprised me. I didn't think this time of year fish were willing to move that much. So that was my first little hint on what I need to be doing to compete in these tournaments. So I stuck with that, and I was getting solid bites. And that's why out of all these things, I think that is probably the number one killer. In some sort of shape, whether that's, a big underspin that you can swim fairly low in the column and have that, thick thumping action, that heavy thumping action, or if it's something like this. I think that is probably going to be the number one way to get bit this time of year. And then a little later on, I know this is a chatterbait with a skirt that fell off, and I threw it early last year just because it was in my tackle box, and surprisingly it started getting bit. That was really opening my eyes last year as well to the potential to getting a reaction bite in early spring, well, late winter technically. And that's a killer. I bet you that would be working even right now, but I just haven't been throwing it much because I sort of got stuck on a few things that were working really well for me, and I didn't get further along in my bait progression. But it's in my box for a reason. I have confidence in any of this stuff. And then I'm going to backtrack a little bit what was working early winter, and then I didn't have my boat the rest of the winter, so I didn't see it through to see if it would continue working. But a deep diving crank, that was working pretty well, and covering water especially, and working through some areas, because what happened in the winter is it seemed like they were in the depth range I was looking for, but they were starting to disappear from a number of my spots. I would say only 25% of my deep spots were holding fish anymore. And to work through those spots quickly, that was a key bait. And so it helped me figure out where the fish were and weren't as that transition happened. And so once I started keying into that they were looking up, you could always throw a jerkbait over the top of cover where they're likely hanging out, or a boulder field, stumps, laydowns, just twitching that over the top. And I know guys, shout out to a couple of you guys, completely smashing big largemouth with this thing. Not this exact bait, but other variants. And that has its place, especially if you're out there just trying to get one or two giant bites. And I see guys making that work. That's cool. And I used to fish like that before I was a tournament fisherman. I was just out there to get the biggest bite, even if it meant no bite in 3 days, but then I'd get a 6-pounder. And that is literally how I operated before I started doing tournament fishing. So up until basically 2 years ago, that's all I focused on was big bites. Right now we got a nasty cold front coming through, and it's windy, snowing, mixed with rain. That's why I'm here. I should be cleaning this damn room. I should be organizing my boat. I did some of that yesterday. I should be doing some productive stuff. Instead, here I am making a video. Sound like more fun to me. Okay, I digress. So let's jump ahead to something else I probably think is working the same way as that chatterbait. I actually swim it. This is a lipless. I actually swim it similar to a chatterbait. And I just watched a video of from Tactical Bassin where Tim throws it almost the same way. And I thought I was kind of alone in that I don't just use it for ripping grass or covering the tops of grass on flats and things like that. I use it a little differently. I'll use it in open water, rip it right over some boulders or some stumps where I think fish are hanging. And that gets a reaction bite too. I'll do that the same way as I do that heavy chatterbait. And by the way, like a 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce chatterbait works really well in that deeper water for those big smallmouth. Early spring. I'd say late winter, technically. I will be getting to that probably in the next few weeks. I'll be getting more of those aggressive bites. But for now, I'll go over what was working when it wasn't quite that easy. Everyone's going to hate me for this one. But I was fascinated by it. So I gave it a try. Just a minnow style, soft jerkbait. Almost like a Demiki rig. But I was throwing it a little differently. And I had a lot of fun with that. Because I got to play with some fish and see how they react. And I didn't know how to fish it before. And I had given it a try last year. And I just quickly put it away and didn't get it back out. But because I saw how those fish reacted to that Kitech, I thought, okay, this is similar presentation in terms of like water column. Are they looking up? So that brings me to mid-strolling. I know everyone's talking about it, and I'm sure y'all are tired of hearing it, but that now will have a place in my winter box moving forward. It is very powerful. It doesn't work as often as I would hope, but I think I can get better. I'm already seeing enough evidence that it will be a killer for me late winter. What's nice about it is I find it more versatile than people give it credit for. And I see a lot of guys just doing the same thing with it. But really though, it's nice because you could do mid-stroll right over the top of them in like, 25 foot of water. If they're not biting it, if they're not willing to rise up that high and grab that, then just transition into bottom strolling. Just throw a heavier, like a heavier jig head, and then ride it a little lower. And those same fish that may not have risen up for that that mid stroll, will then maybe take a look at that bottom stroll. So I like that versatility. I think that's cool. You could also jerk it. I like jerk baiting in general. I think that's fun to get them teased up and biting that way. So I'll even throw it as like a deep water soft jerk bait. And so I have the ability to adapt to what the fish are telling me. And I think that alone is very powerful and a key to my success so far. So I don't know how long that'll work, if that's something that works even in the summer when the fish are lethargic. I'm super excited to find out, and I might end up throwing that quite a bit. I find it to be a fun way of fishing, even though it's like saturated the market and all, content creators are talking about it and raving about it. I was almost tired of it before I even tried it on the first time. But I think it's worth giving it a try. So between I would say 80% of my big fish, and I don't know how many big fish I've already caught. This has been a sensational February for me. I think up until the tournament, before this last tournament, I probably caught 12 or 14 bass over 4 pounds just this month. I mean, this shit's working. I think I had 3 or 4 over 5 pounds. And in a time of the year where I have less confidence and, just never fished, that's sensational. And so I'm speaking with a fair amount of confidence here on these baits. This is dynamite stuff here. And all worth a shout out, worth me sitting down and doing a video on it, even though I lack experience. I don't know if this is specific to the Northwest, but, in general, these baits, but they sure as hell work for me. And I'm fishing some cold water. So I feel like it's all worth a try. I didn't really dive into this jig section as much, but a couple shout outs here. If you're, a little bit more of a budget fisherman, go ahead and pick yourself up some Bitsy bugs and get the heaviest they make. I think the Bitsy bug flipping makes one with just a slightly bigger hook, and I actually don't care for a bigger hook this time of year, but heavier weight is key because bottom contact with a compact presentation, I think, is a good way to go. I think these are tops $2 a jig, and if you want to be able to fish stuff and not worry about breaking off, that's a great way to fish. You got some nasty looking stumps or something you're working on, just have one tied on all the time. Even if you break off and then have to throw something else, retie one up later, it's not going to kill you financially to throw those around, And I mean, if you're not on that nasty stuff, sometimes you're not fishing. And so that gets a solid shout out. And then if you don't mind copying for similar presentation, these little Kitech football heads, this one's a little heavier than my liking, but this is probably great for like 40, 50, maybe even 60 feet, which is like a little, you can even put like a little Kitech on there, or, this one I have a little double tail. Compact presentation, working that ground contact is a good way to go too. And you could throw on even one of these little, I forget what to call them. It's Kitech, but it's not the swing. Slipping my mind. Maybe I'll throw up the video when I put it up. But that has a nice little subtle kick to it, and might be better to get bit on some days. But nothing beats, honestly, nothing is beating the Kitech. Now you know why it's the #1 selling swim bait on the market. It just flat out catches them. And I'm not a bandwagon guy at all. I actually try not to watch much stuff and keep my mind wide open to different things. And that one is there for a reason. It is a killer. I saw a lot of big fish get caught on both tournaments using that same bait. And yeah, there's no denying it. That should, so if you don't have 4 packs of those minimum in your boat or in your tackle box, just go spend the money, get those suckers. And I actually repair my own using the Mend It. I think it's called Mend It. I got it on Amazon for like $9. And I'll just fix mine up. They get tore up a little easy, but I'll fix mine up and reuse them through the spring, because I'll get to my spring stuff. But that's a killer on my my spring setups too, like my swim jigs and stuff like that. So I'll go over that stuff. Hopefully I'm not too busy. I get absolutely slammed at work come April, and between getting out on the water and fishing and family and work, it's, videos take a back seat. And I apologize if I was getting more followers or sort of more incentives of any sort. I would totally pump these out over getting an extra day on the water per week. It's just, obviously fishing is my passion, not making videos. I do enjoy this, and the fact that I get to help a few of you guys out with a few extra catches maybe every season, that is fun. And honestly, it all comes back to, I didn't have this information when I was first starting out, before I could really expand on what I know. I wish I had someone showing me some things that, are tested and 100% working, so I could throw something with a little more confidence. So I like the idea of filling a small void here in the Northwest. And I know there's other guys doing it now, and that's awesome, but I hope I get to fill that void even more. So hopefully this year I get more viewers and get to share some tips. And I love seeing you guys out on the water. I get approached regularly, even though I don't have a strong following. I think that's super cool. And guys telling me they caught one doing this or that, something they saw on my Fish Brain or my YouTube. I think that's really cool. And it's getting that feedback is what helps me get motivated to make these videos as well. So thanks for tuning in, and the few of you guys that are watching these videos, I hope you take something from them, and you're not just watching me totally smack them. I bet that gets a little boring, wishing you could do that on the water as well. But that's what these informative videos are. And hopefully I get a couple of you guys on the water getting those crazy days as well. I mean, shoot, I'm blessed to have these days on the water, and you'll see some more this year. I already know I'm gonna smash it, and this is 5 years running, just absolutely crushing them year after year. And by the way, for y'all thinking I'm a live scoper, I was crushing them before I got my live scope. And these techniques work just the same. A lot of what I'm going to show you guys in the spring, you don't need to have fancy electronics. So I know it's got the community pretty divided right now, but it's a tool. It's a useful tool. Just leave it alone. That's like hating on a mechanic because he's using a compressor to turn wrenches. It's like, it's silly. And I don't agree with the debate at all. You can't hate someone for getting the job done a little easier. And that's my 2 cents there, but just a little sick of this debate, to be honest. And I know from personal experience, it's not that easy, even if you do got live scope. And for you guys that just got it, you guys know it's not putting fish in the boat for you. Certainly isn't. It's giving you another tool to figure out what these fish want, and that's how you should look at it. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and apologize for the mess. I'm glad you can't see too much of it, but This place is a pit. I'll be cleaning this up so it's a little more organized and presented. I should do a little pan view here of how much of a mess this is this early in the season after I go through and clean all my hooks and reorganize all my baits, throw out some, put in new. It's a process. But yeah, that's what's going on this time of year. And usually I'm just doing that, not fishing. Now I'm fishing, so I'm going to be a little slower to get to all this. So it is what it is. At least I'm out there hammering them and hopefully helping you guys do the same. So take it easy, guys, and tight lines. And feel free to come back to my YouTube if you end up doing something I'm telling you and it's working for you. I love to see the feedback. So thanks, guys. See you next time.